Attorney General Jeff Sessions. One man at the heart of everything is the Vice President Mike Pence. We sat down with him at the White House today where he spoke about the repeal of Obamacare, Russia conspiracies, and the drama between the President and his Attorney General. Here's part of the conversation. Mr. Vice President, thanks for joining us.
You bet, Tucker.
So
welcome to the White
reassure
House.
those of us who are watching and our viewers who are basically supportive, I think, of the administration that things are not chaotic, as they seem sometimes from the outside.
Well, we've been making incredible progress for the American people from the very beginning of this administration. 860,000 new jobs. ISIS is on the run in Iraq and in Syria. The largest increase in defense spending in more than 10 years. The President signed legislation rolling back an avalanche of red tape that came out of this last administration, and confirming Justice Neil Gorsuch to the Supreme Court are all part of the first 6 months of this administration. But as we speak, Congress is working to keep their promise, and the President's promise to repeal and replace Obamacare. And before the year is out, we'll be on to passing the largest tax cut in American history. It is a time of great focus here at the White House, great promise for the country, and it's all owing to the leadership and the tenacity of President Donald Trump.
Given that there's so much else going on, why would the President tweet again this morning an attack on his Attorney General? Why not call Attorney General Sessions on the phone or bring him into the office and express those? Why do it in public?
Well, look, I think the President's been very candid that he was disappointed with the Attorney General's decision to recuse himself and to not know about his intention to do so before he was confirmed as the Attorney General of the United States. But I have to tell you, Tucker, you've been around Washington for a long time. I know the Washington way is to talk behind people's backs, but that's not President Donald Trump's approach. One of the great things about this president is you always know where you stand. And I think what the American people like about this president is he speaks candidly, he speaks openly. He's expressed his disappointment, but that doesn't mean that we don't recognize the good work the Justice Department has been doing under the Attorney General's leadership, taking on MS-13 gangs, removing them from the streets, confronting sanctuary cities, rolling back that policy across the country.
I think it's the public expression of it that rattles people, the idea that you would attack someone who works for you on Twitter. And I wonder if you worry personally, if the President was displeased with you, that he might tweet about you that way. Does that ever occur to you?
Well, I think one of the President's virtues is his candor. I think the reason why you saw 15,000 people in Youngstown, Ohio last night cheering this President on, the reason why you saw Boy Scouts and their families from all across America cheering the President on in that vast throng in West Virginia earlier this week is because people know we have a president who says what he means and means what he says. There's no attempt to hide his feelings, and his expressed disappointment here is very sincere. And he said we'll see what happens in the future, but at least the American people know, and every member of the cabinet can know that you'll always know where you stand with President Trump.
So the White House press secretary has said the White House supports Russia sanctions. Do those sanctions help the United States in a material way that voters can understand, do you think?
Well, this administration has supported the renewal of sanctions with regard to Russian aggression in Ukraine, and we'll continue to work with the Congress on additional sanctions.
But does it help America to impose these sanctions on
Russia and North Korea and Iran? Well, I think that's a question for the President of the United States and our State Department to determine. Look, President Trump's made it very clear, Tucker, that he believes if we could get along better with other countries around the world, including Russia, that'd be a good thing. If we can find common cause with competitors and even potential adversaries around the world, that would be a positive. But the legislation that's moving through the Congress now, we'll let the Congress continue to work its will and evaluate that. But this president stands for advancing America's interests around the world, engaging countries around the world. But we've supported sanctions in the past, and we'll give every consideration to this bill when it comes to the President's desk.
We've got more of our interview with the Vice President later on in the show. President Trump renewed his attacks